So one of the things as we continue to grow, look at Josh, very excited. He might be more excited than me today. Um, and Stacy knows you too. So you see some familiar faces here. So, as we grow this program, one of the most important things is community resources and how we really put all this together. Right. And, Calissa's background working, I don't know how any person could work for Rory, Netta, and Rob Lehman all at once. And, if you've ever met Rob Lehman, he's intense, right? Like there's like a spreadsheet for everything. So, I've known Calissa for 4 years, and, I attribute what a lot of people don't know is I attribute learning how to work with Rory and like how we built this great relationship really through her, right? She taught me a lot of like how to work with them, how to think through these things. And like from getting conference rooms to getting meetings, like she was a real big lifeline for me at Compass. And I could candidly say like my timeline of where I ended up here would not have happened without her. And a lot of people don't know that. So, we've always had this dream that she could work here. And recently she started this week as our luxury operations manager for literally this mastermind and the other ones that we're doing. So you'll see her on her retreats, you'll see her at Friendsgiving, and she really will be the person that will be our point of contact for all of these things. Right. So, Calissa, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about yourself and something that they don't know about you.
Hi guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Like Chirag mentioned, I actually have known him now for 4 years. I don't think Chirag knows this or remembers this, I should say. So something interesting is that I actually set up his onboarding. I remember I was working for Gordon at the time. If you I know some of the New York tri-state agents, you guys will know Gordon Golub. He was like my first exec at Compass that I was supporting. And he mentioned to me like the Friday before that we had a new person starting on Monday to ask me to set it up. And so I did all of Chirag's like intro meetings. I don't know if he remembers that, but that was like an interesting fact. And so I've made my transition here and I'm super excited. I can't wait to really get to know each and every one of you. And I'll be here as a resource support to try to shoulder some of the responsibility. I know Chirag is having this massive undertaking and making sure that this program is so exclusive and really productive for all of you guys that you learned something. And I'm really excited to get started. And I know some of you well. Hey, Josh. And I hope to get to know a lot more of you guys really more closely and work and partner and make this a wonderful experience for everyone. So thank you so much for having me.
So no, thank you. Thank you for being here. And look, like with growth comes different opportunities and different resources. Look, I want to continue our conversation, right? So as you've seen the new format, we jump right into the training, we go through a discussion, we do our housekeeping at the end, we'll send you an email. And look, it took me a while to put together that email as it went out this morning because I kept thinking about it over and over again. Margot and I had this great conversation this week that we're going to set a follow-up for, but it's really identifying, right? If you weren't here last week, if your clients are clients, if your agents are getting leads in any capacity, how do you break that down into segments, right? Because not closing, not converting, that's not a thing. It's ambiguous. And in any ambiguity, there can't be precision. So now think about this. I'll just do a recap with an example. And I'll use Margot again because we used her last week. So Margot gets a listing lead. From the way that she takes the listing lead and shares it with somebody else, that's one thing to examine. Now the person as the initial point of contact, getting them into a property or getting them into a consult. How do they give the consultation? How do they qualify the person? How do they share the market? How do they secure or not secure a buyer broker's agreement? From there, it's how do they show property? Do they write winning offers? Can they share comps and get people to write effective offers? There's a variety of different things that an agent does in a sales cycle to get to a closing. So for us to most effectively support our agents, we want to make sure that 0 to 1, we identify all of the steps. 1 to 2, we want to give them space to be honest where they're challenged the most. 2 to 3, We want to look at this across our entire team. And as I said last week, we're in the pattern recognition business. You will see when you do this for several people where they're challenged, and you're like, huh, this is interesting. So in essence, what you're doing is you're giving them space to be honest. You're listening to what they want. Everyone likes to feel heard. Three, you're meeting them where they are by creating more curated training that speaks to the parts that they need help with that will ultimately make the most impact on the business. Does that make sense to everybody? So I sent you an email that you could send and tweak and everything else like that. All you have to do is break down your process. And to the Stacy Froelich rule, if you guys haven't heard this, everyone needs homework every week. I actually call it that across all of our platforms now. So you're going to be the legendary person for implementation and homework. Some people might not like you for it, but it's okay.
I was just about to say, it could
Then
go
they-
the opposite way, Chirag.
then they shouldn't be here. If you don't want to do work, go home. So look, that's a recap from last week. But there's a more important part to this now. How many of you see your team members and staff starting to get a little worried, a little uncertain, a little paranoid, doing things that seem out of character because they're fearful for the economy?
All of us are doing that, I think.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to start talking about actual emotional intelligence skills and conversations. And David's like a Yoda wizard with all this stuff, right? And you have to realize this. Are you listening to listen, or are you listening to talk? Right? And that's the basis of all this. Are we really hearing, seeing, and acknowledging where other people are? And look, here's the hard part that's going to be for all of you. Some people, because they get like this, and if you don't pay attention, the dumb shit they do can ruin your reputation, just like this, right? In this wonderful country called America, you can be the greatest person in the world, and you can be out of character one day and walk up to stage and slap somebody, and that's it. It's done. No one remembers the last great thing. We all, as a country, like to remember the one bad thing. And that's how it is, right? And it's like that whole "you're as good as your last deal" thing. I don't really buy into that, but you're as good as what people say about you, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's the world we live in. And a lot of these things come from not being able to manage people's emotions and expectations, right? So a couple things to think about. I'm going to let David share some nuggets here, and then we want to hear from all of you. And Calissa, we'll organize what they're hearing and challenges and notes so we can give it back to them. Because if one of them is saying it, someone else on another team has it, right? It's how are you communicating with these people? What are their active workloads? How do they feel about it? And then if you really had to talk to your employees, do they feel where they work is a solid ground? Or do they feel like it's quicksand because one day it's here, one day it's there? This is the priority now. Nothing's getting done. Well, what about this? And then they shift over there. They're not entrepreneurs. They signed up to have a job, J-O-B, right? They're working in real estate businesses, not startup companies, right? So when people go for a job, they generally come for a job description, a specific set of activities, right? But if we're not good about managing people's emotions and prioritizing our tasks or creating real project plans and seeing things to the end, our employees can have a very fragmented experience and they can be very flustered. Pair that with uncertainty in the market going down, you'll see mass layoffs in the first quarter in companies next year. Watch. People be laying off 10, 20, 30, like you'll see massive layoffs. So now you're going to have a bunch of people on top of that are fearful of their jobs. So if you add in the emotions of being fearful for your jobs, you have people that have shifting priorities. So therefore you feel like you're not getting anything done. This is how people show up and do really crappy work. And then you turn around like, I don't know what happened to this person, Chirag. They used to do so well. Does this make sense to all of you? Do any of you think you might be doing this a little bit to somebody? I mean, maybe not, right?
When you say we do it to somebody, do you mean running a disorganized business, fragmented and all of that stuff? Is that what you're saying?
It is nothing to do with running a business. It's the way that you run them.
Yeah. Well, I think it's incredibly common in real estate agents to be running around and starting some projects that we don't finish because we tend to be opportunistic and jumping on things. And I mean, some more so than others, but certainly there have been things that I'm working on now that I've had as priorities in past years, and those projects have not come to fruition, and I'm trying to be more of a person of my word and get it done right now. But I totally get it. Yeah.
So here's what I want you guys to think about. Number one, you want to ask people questions, right? And then I'm going to kick it over to David, and then we're going to open up to all of you. Do you feel the priorities that you have to work on every day for the team are clear? That's one question. The second question, I'm going to put an asterisk next to this. I would not ask this to everyone, but there's some people, team members that appreciate this, right? Do you feel there's a consistent work environment in terms of what's expected to you, what's expected of you, and what's being done? And number three is, what support would you like for your job to be most effective? Like, what do they want from you to be most effective? Like, look, I'll give you guys an example. For my team, right? Do you know what they say the support they want from me is to be most effective? You guys all want to laugh? For me, not to go to the staff meetings. They have a weekly staff meeting, and I'm not even kidding you. I've made an agreement with my operations manager, Tiffany, that I will not go. I go once a month. I convey the vision, where we are at the vision, kind of what's going. David can go. Anyone can go to this meeting except Chirag, because they say that's the most effective thing. Because I'm excited. I have a lot of ideas that things need to get done. I'm not going to add anything positive to that meeting. And in the end, I asked for an exchange. I said, I need a very clear recap so I know what everyone's doing, what's going on. And I look at the recap, and I've learned to work within their parameters. They're all happier and more stuff gets done, right? It's not a bad thing. It's understanding who you are and what your contributions are. It's a very weird thing. Do you know how many people come up to me, you must run an incredible staff meeting? I'm like, no, I'm not even welcome. They're just like, what? It doesn't work that way for us, right? But that's what works for them, and that's what's important. So to execute a vision, the people around you need to be supportive of it, and you need to let them help build it. David?
What Chirag is talking about is what goes on between all the combinations of people on your team, especially in terms of communication. Like, you can think of, like, you've seen pictures of the internet with, like, you know, some computers on a page, and then there's a bunch of dotted lines between them, and that's like the concept of what the web is, right? It's kind of the same thing in your business. You've got 3 people, 6 people, 8 people, and there are these connections between everybody. It's a network of communication. And what we see over and over and over again on these teams is the bosses tend to think that everybody's on the same page with them when they're really not. And the bosses make a lot of assumptions about where their staff are. I don't mean physically, but where they are mentally or emotionally on something, and they're really not there. One of the questions that I've been working with people who are on my Wednesday calls now, I do a Wednesday call every Wednesday morning with team leaders. And one of the things I've challenged them to ask all their team members is a simple question, which I call the eye-opening question. And that is, what do you believe are my expectations of you? Because we happen to be talking about expectations on the team. And it's an eye-opening question, because when a leader asks that question, they get so much stuff back that's different from what they expect that it's eye-opening. Like, they think they've pounded a message into somebody 100 times, and what they get back when they ask that question is, duh, I don't know. Or, you know, they think they've delivered message A, but everybody's hearing message B or message B, C, D, and E. And so this points out, as an observer from the outside, how much of a loss factor there is in communication, and how we're perceiving something around us that's so different from what it is. And so how do you get at that? Well, you need to ask questions and listen, just like Chirag's talking about. A big piece of this is the emotional tenor that's running on a team at any given time. All of us are human beings. We have emotional architecture built within us. That's a physical piece of how our brain works in the amygdala and other parts of our body secreting adrenaline, things like that. And we have things happening in our life all the time, and we interpret them in a certain way that puts us in an emotional place. Sometimes we're cool, we're even keel, everything's fine. Sometimes we're freaking out. Sometimes we're somewhere in between there. And so one thing about understanding your teammates is to understand where they are on an emotional map at any given time in their life. And you know this in your relationship with a significant other, right? Some days they're up high, other days they're down low, and it's probably better for your marriage or your relationship that you have a sense of where that person is, especially because you can support them at that time. But we often ignore this in the business setting because we're so busy just getting stuff done. But the reality is that's where everybody is, right? Everybody is somewhere at a given moment in time. Everybody's trying to do their job, but there's an emotional experience that they're having. And so emotional intelligence it's been defined as the ability to perceive, understand, and manage emotions effectively. The ability to perceive, understand, and manage effectively, both in yourself and others around you. And so there's a specific skill set there that was first identified in the early 90s. Some guys one guy in Yale, one guy in University of New Hampshire. They were looking at how do we account for the difference between outstanding leaders and merely good leaders? Why is it that there's a few leaders out there in sports and religion and business and everywhere else that seem to be so well loved by everybody and anybody will follow them anywhere, whereas other leaders are just merely good? They're trying to figure out what is that like X factor or X factors that can account for that difference. And what they found in the work was that there was this ability to understand and manage the emotional experience that the people were going through alongside them. Be there when the person needs you to be there. Let them go when they need to be let go. It's, understanding what that emotional kind of tide is for anybody at a given moment in time. And so coming up with that definition, they said, perceive, understand, and manage. There's three parts of that. First is perception. That's all about awareness, which is about asking questions. It's about listening carefully. It's about reading body language, reading behind the words. There's a big piece there that we miss every day. And you probably had it in your life at one time or another where somebody was upset about something, like your significant other says, honey, we need to talk. And you're like, what happened? I don't get it. Well, why do you say we need to talk? Because something went over your head, right? That's why it's a surprise for you. So the perception in that particular case is missing. There was some kind of signal that you didn't get. Understand means being able to make sense of what that is. And emotions are not simple, they're complex. And third, then, being able to understand what it is. How do I respond to it? How do I manage it? And this is both for yourself and the people around you. And so the perception piece is all about asking questions, understanding, paying attention. Second piece is about understanding what emotions are. How do we distinguish between them? And I'll share one page with you guys here just in a moment for that. And then there is, okay, so what do we do about it? So that second piece, understanding, it's important to be able to not just perceive what's happening, but to be able to have a nuanced understanding that describes this complex soup that we're sometimes in. And so people have come up with what we call the emotional vocabulary. Part of being effective in understanding and talking about emotion is to have a nuanced vocabulary to do it. And unfortunately, in general business and in general life, we have a very lousy vocabulary for it. Two words come up over and over again. Upset, stressed. I'm upset. Okay, great. That tells me something that's wrong with you, probably emotionally. I'm stressed out. Okay, that tells me something's wrong with you, but it doesn't give me any kind of insight into what you're really feeling. So to get a little bit more nuance, and we can share this out with everybody later, here's a simple emotional vocabulary. 6 primary emotions. Each of them has a whole set of gradation words that tell us a little bit more about that particular category. The ones I suggest that you pay most attention to are the ones here in the middle, mad and scared, or you might call them anger and fear. All of those words underneath are some version of that, especially the fearful one. People often say, I'm nervous or I'm anxious. What they're really saying is, I'm afraid. I'm fearful. And so part of our skill in understanding what someone else is experiencing at a moment in time is to be able to go beyond saying, I see Stacy is upset, or I see she's stressed. If you were to actually ask her about it and you'd say, well, would you say you're nervous or you're panicked? Well, I'm not really panicked. I'm just nervous. Okay, got it. Are you just nervous? Well, no, I'm a little angry too. Oh, angry. Okay, so you're nervous and angry. Well, would you say you're annoyed or would you say you're livid? Well, I guess I'm kind of livid. Okay, great. So we've just brought a whole lot of specificity to what she's experiencing. She's experienced a high level or gradient of anger and a rather low gradient or level of fear. And that means a lot. It's a whole lot better to deal with that than it is to simply say, oh, you're stressed, because that doesn't really tell us much at all. So we'll share this out. But the point here is, folks, perceive, understand, and manage. And from 0 to 1, best thing you can possibly do is ask questions and try to parse what it is you're getting back. And you can use this vocabulary to help you. Who has a question or a comment about any of that?
And whose head did that just completely go over?
I mean, a comment, I guess, is just, I thought it was incredibly insightful and helpful just to think about the emotions to really focus in on when you come across. And that is around, being mad or angry or scared and afraid. And those are the ones that like we really need to make sure we're in tune with when we come across them, and understand and manage.
Yeah, those are the biggest ones that you need to manage effectively for success. When you go back to what makes these leaders outstanding, it can be translated into their ability to manage the experience of the people around them when they are in either of those categories or both. There's not much managing you need to do when the other person's so happy that they're ecstatic or they're elated, but you can meet them there and share that experience with them, which is a positive thing for them. But it's the fear and the anger that you really need to deal with. And we're not so good at talking about that, in our culture. That's why there's some discipline that you need to bring here to become more skillful at it.
Look, and a lot of people think they're like, oh man, in the words of John Zimmerman, this is some hokey pokey bullshit. It's really not. Like, dealing with people and how they feel is the essence of culture. Stacy, you can talk about this in the insurrection. That was based on a whole bunch of feelings, right?
Hate the insurrection. Yes, we've come a long way. Yeah, no, I've gotten much better at talking to my team about what they're thinking and feeling. And actually, I think the biggest thing that helps is incorporating them a little more in the process and the decision making and getting their buy-in and their opinions, because they are functioning adults, most of them. And when they feel a part of the process and they feel heard, they feel better about being on the team. So I think everyone is very happy right now and very nervous and very scared and very frustrated, but not with me and not with each other. And we're using each other to support each other.
Can you share a little bit of kind of what happened and what emotions you really think played into people in this whole insurrection?
Yeah, I'd like to ask you to tell us a little bit, whatever you feel comfortable to share, and then name any of the words that are on this screen that you think reflect what people were experiencing at that time. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, what I really think happened is that I had one person on the team who is no longer on the team, who was starting to produce a lot. And so he was getting a very big head and he was thinking, oh, I can get a bigger split and I could do this and I'm not getting enough. So he sort of took an opportunity. And I don't actually think everyone else was that frustrated, but he sort of kind of stirred the pot. And I was away, ironically, at a real estate team leader conference prior to Chirag Shah Coaching. And they sort of decided to band together, thinking that they would be able to negotiate better terms if they banded together, and demand some things if they banded together, which in some ways backfired, and in some ways we made a lot of changes from it. So I think it was really from one person who was frustrated. If I'm going to use your
please
words,
name all the words that you think were part of that experience for somebody on the team.
I think his name was Mike. Mike was frustrated and he was irritated that he was such a large producer and he felt like he was on top of the world. And I think that's really the only, like, the mad part is the only section that applied.
Yep.
And then he made everyone else feel like, hey, well, maybe I could ask for more. And that's sort of what happened. He ended up leaving the team and the team has never been better since. I ended up getting rid of another person who they tried to like have me promote, who wasn't qualified. And they kept saying
Stacy's a new Terminator.
they said they wanted a sales manager, right? But in the end, when I really had more deep conversations, they really each wanted more of an assistant, and they wanted someone to help with their showings, which is crazy because only business they had was business I was giving them, and I was already paying them to do the showing. So it kind of, a lot of it really didn't make sense. But once we hired Henry, who's my nephew, and he's there to like help them with their CRM and just help them a little more and help them cut and paste the social media stuff that I plan out for them. Like that kind of changed everything for them because they felt supported. And then we also went and produced all the things that Rob, my director of ops, does for them. So it was like all on paper so they could see. And once they saw that, they were like, oh, I guess we do have the support that we're not utilizing. And then I said, the splits are the splits. If you want a bigger split, you can go look for another team. I'm not changing the splits. And then they were all like, oh no, we're happy with the splits. It wasn't about the splits, but it was for Mike. And since Mike has now become a team leader at another company, and he has called me several times to apologize and say what an asshole he was and didn't respect how hard I worked for him and how hard it is to be a team leader. And I have gotten at least 3 calls telling me that since. So it ended up working out well, and now our team is much more cohesive, and I am a much better manager and leader. And I talk to them, and we implemented. I meet with each and every one of them every other week for half an hour, and talk about their feelings and their business, and that has changed everything. I mean, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked every week that they don't want to cancel that half an hour. I'm always hoping someone cancels so I can have that half an hour, but they do not cancel that meeting. They like it. They count on it. They want that time with me. And I've grown to see that it is important to them. And again, it's not that structured, but we talk about how they're feeling and what they're working on and what they need my help on, and or they just vent and I listen, and that's fine too.
You know, everybody, I'd like to just like point out one thing that, you know, for those of you who are hard chargers and it's business, business, business all the time, and there's no place for emotion in business, you know what? Scratch a human being, a business person, and surprise, surprise, there's a human being underneath. You know, and so we're always a human being, no matter what business we're in, whatever our life has given us. And so we're having some experience of whatever that is. And we may not get highly emotional like some other people do, but we have to recognize that we're all there at one time or another. And you need to recognize when somebody is in a place like that so that you can support them. Finally, I'll say it's, you know, they say feelings are facts. They are. Feelings are facts for the person who has them. And you might think there's no place for them in business, but so what? They've got them and they're real for that person. And so, you know, Stacy points out a very interesting piece here that nobody wants to give up that. One thing that's important to remember is people connect with other human beings through how they feel, not what they think. We love someone because of a feeling or an emotional experience we had of that person. You think of people who went through the war together and they're like connected forever after because they went through the terror and the suffering and those kinds of things. Or you love somebody, you feel connected to that person because of how you feel, not because of what you think. And politicians do this all the time. You know, they want to connect to people on a feeling level if they can, but people don't follow something like, I will reduce the deficit by 2.6% over the next 18 and a half months. People don't vote for that, right? They vote for some kind of a feeling that they have for the person, like he or she really cares about me, right? Understands my problems. And so you should understand, same thing with your clients. People will connect with you because when they're having an experience of excitement and you're sharing it with them, that's a connecting experience. If they're having an experience of anger and you're like in judgment with them, well, you shouldn't feel angry over that. They don't feel that as a connecting experience. They feel it as a disconnecting experience, right? They're having an experience of not being heard, not being related to. And so we relate to each other through how we feel. And so it's crucial for you to be able to understand where that person is on the emotional map and be there with them. Doesn't mean you have to solve their problems. I don't know that Stacy's solving all their problems. She says sometimes they just need to vent. But meeting them where they are and allowing them to vent gives them a powerful feeling. And you know how you can tell if someone has felt connected to you? Very simple evidence. When they're upset about something, either angry or scared, either of those categories, and they say to you, "Thank you for listening," or "You're a good listener." If they say that to you, what they're saying is, "I felt heard and felt related to by you, and it's such a strong and powerful experience for me that I want to say it to you." And so if you never hear that phrase from your team or you never hear it from your clients, it means you're not listening, you're not connecting enough, period.
One thing I thought was really interesting is that how, like, I am the kind of person, I say what I think and I mean what I say. And I'm never like trying to manipulate or to phrase things in a way that isn't how I feel. But not everyone's like that. And so, but I didn't know that because I've always been like that. So Meg, who's one of my favorite people on my team, when she first started, she had come from another business where she was not treated very well. And apparently everything that they said was like a challenge or a test. So she kind of assumed that at the beginning that that's what I was doing. And she was like filtering my communication through like a past experience. And it took me a while to figure that out because I'd be like, I don't understand how that was not like, how didn't you hear me right? She was like filtering it through something and thinking I was like not being forthcoming. And so we had to like sit down and like talk it through and be like, I'm never manipulating you. I'm never saying anything to you that isn't the truth. Like whatever you've been through in the past was not me. And if you're having issues with my communicate, like with hearing what I'm saying, then that's you. That's not me. I am telling you exactly how I feel. And that after that conversation, everything got so much better because now she's like, so I could just take you at your word. Yeah, take me at my word. And I felt actually really bad for her that she had that experience in the past where people were treated her so poorly and that was all her expectation, you know? And that made me, you know, feel really bad for her, but now everything's perfect because she knows that I mean what I say.
So what I'm taking out of that is you perceived something that you hadn't perceived before that.
Yeah, no, I didn't understand why she wasn't following.
Correct. It's maybe natural, right? Given your inclination and given your experience in life, there's a certain way we communicate that's effective and appropriate and all that, and you use that. But coming from her experience in life, it's something different. And
Can I flag
that's why you
something
need to ask, and this is why you need to ask and understand. And when you understand, then you can come to a different agreement, or you can, switch your approach to something else. But without that understanding of what the world looks like from their point of view, you're kind of like stuck.
So I want to flag something to all of you. You know how we do that MED-C, motivations, expectations, disappointments, and concerns? We always say people's past disappointments will affect their present decisions. So Josh, I believe we have this on your intake form, right? Are there any past disappointments you had on your last team or last brokerage that you'd like to avoid in the next team that you go on? If you're not asking people that question right when they come to your team, number one, you're poisoning your well, right? You don't know what somebody's bringing with them. And the other part is, how can you really truly understand the people? The one thing I know about all of you is you guys all really care about your teammates and other people that you're around and your clients. If you do not understand some of these past disappointments, you cannot most effectively work with them. Period. End of story. Because if you look at Stacy's insurrection, as we call it, which led her to be the Terminator, so I'm really happy, is this. Those are all emotions. It had to do with ego. It had to do a feeling. I love that I see people chatting as I see people smiling. I see people type. And then I look to see who the next person that types and smiles in. Don't you guys realize I'm watching everything? Like I know Stacy and Margot sometimes have a little chat going here because I see them giggling. But you know, the reality is that was a purely emotional led decision. Now, if you're not attending to people in this time that's coming up with all the stuff that's going on in the news, you'll see stuff going on at Compass and all these other places, you're setting yourself up for liability. That's why we brought this session in. That's what we talked about the last session, right? The goal of this stuff now is to put it all together and that it builds on each other. So the last thing you want is like some little negative, like shit talker on your team to be stirring a pot of all happy people, because most people are followers. They're not leaders. And all it takes is one person to start complaining, and then all these other complaints come out. And on a day-to-day basis, people look at the good outweighs the bad, and they're fine. Then when you have one person that wants to be a ringleader to the complaints, it snowballs really quickly. So when you're checking in with people and you're saying things like, you know, how could I support you best in your role? You're really understanding what's missing for them and how you could help them. They all want you. That's why you're here, right? They want you. So start thinking about this. It's not hokey pokey stuff. One of the reasons that you guys all like me as a person is because I listen to all of you. I could tell pretty much every single person on this call how you make decisions, what you'll do, what you'll not do. I can tell you why you did something because that's how you feel, and these are your past experiences, right? Like I've done this with a lot of you. And so helping make sense of this and taking this as a skill of leadership is how we effectively grow our team members. It's how we create great culture. Because look, when everything is good, it's good. But when everything is bad, it gets real, right? And you guys, and this is how it snowballs. Very quickly, you then can be in a state of ego that says, wait a second. You'll not listen to a single thing I said. Do you know what I've done for this person? And that's where it's gone. As soon as somebody has a problem or a challenge or a feeling, and you go to a state of I've done or I'm doing, you have lost the entire relationship, and it's a sign of bad leadership. Because guess what? Leaders cannot take anything personal. You know, Robert Refkin said this to me during when we're building out his action plan. He said, Chirag, feedback is the greatest gift you can get in life. He says, listen to it, learn from it, and take action from it. David says, what's true for you is true for you. It could be the most delusional thought in the world, but people's feelings are become their beliefs, which become their actions and their reality.
One thing
go
I'd
back
like
to David.
Sorry, Chirag. One thing I'd like to add, because you pointed out the Med C. One reason I believe the Med C is a really powerful tool is because Med C allows the person you're doing it with to connect with their emotions in three of these categories. When you ask motivations, that's putting the person into their joy, into their happy place, right? I can't wait to have a house in the suburbs with the backyard and the white picket fence so my kids can run around. That's what the M part is about. It touches that. Then when you get to the third part, disappointments, that touches the categories here under sad or mad, right? The disappointments that they had, the experience that they had of that is something that they don't want to repeat, right? It's something that they've experienced before that they don't want to see happen again. And so you're connecting them to a memory and the feeling of what it was like to be in that position. And you're right there with them. And then when you say concerns, concern is another word for scary. It's in this category of concern, right? Concern is worry. It's nervousness. It's anxiousness. It's fear. It's a version of fear. And so in the Med C, M, D, and C are inviting the person without them knowing it to connect to their emotional experience of things that they're kind of where they're at. And they're not going to bring up like, you know, something that was a disaster for them, and they're not going to start crying. But what you're doing is you're creating an emotional connection right there. And if you manage that right with some good listening and meeting them where they are and maybe asking a good follow-up question or two, what they walk away with is an experience of someone who connected with them on the feeling level, not just the thinking level, right? The thinking level is, well, I can do this for you, I can do that for you, and here's the process. And we've got 16 steps in our process, and the other guys only have 14, so we're 2 steps better than them, right? That's all thought. One of the pieces of emotional intelligence is to be able to distinguish between thought and feeling. We'll probably talk about it another time. But the point here is the Med C touches on 3 emotional elements without them even knowing it. And if you can be there with them, meet them where they are, what's true for you is true for you. That's where they are. That's what they experience. Then they come away with an experience of being related to or being connected to. And you can't beat that as a salesperson or as a leader. Remember, leadership is always fundamentally beginning, middle, and end, a relationship game.
All right, so what does this bring up for all of you? So this is where I want all of us, and Calissa will take this down as I write it in the chat. I want everyone to commit to one action that they're going to do with their team between now and the next time we meet. And then I want to ask you guys, next week is Thanksgiving Eve. Do you guys want to have a meeting or do you not want to have a meeting? That is solely up to you. We have it calendared. We're happy to do it. If all of you are not going to be here, then we could find another time to do a makeup.
I think I'd vote
But
to
first,
skip next week.
Skip. Scott. Allison, reschedule. All right. It seems like skip is the overwhelming thing. Okay. We'll figure something out about making up. All right. So now this gives you guys 2 weeks to do your homework. So if you don't do it, then I'm going to be calling people out. All right. So everyone start making their commitments. Stacy, since this is your rule, you can go first.
Am I saying it now?
Yeah. Say it now so we can write it down. We'll put it in a sheet and share it out with the group with the recap notes.
Well, I actually wrote up something that I'm going to set. So I've already told them we're going to do goal setting, but and I sent an email last week about what they want me to train them on and training, but it wasn't as specific as yours. And I only got one email back and it was about board packages. So I think I can do better. So I think I'm going to actually put like a Google sheet together with like, what are your goals? How can I support you? What accountability things can I help you with? And I'm going to put something together in writing to send them all to actually fill out. And that's what I'm going to do.
Perfect. Let's see. Who wants to go next? Margot. You guys like the dynamic duo, the two of you. All right, go ahead.
Mute. Well, two things. One is Kevin last year started doing a team survey with feedback in a very specific like type format, and then did it again this year, getting feedback questions on, things that they value, that the team offers, things that are important to them. And then he, was able to compare year over year, which was really helpful, but what it didn't cover, which I'm going to do this week, which I was supposed to do last week, but haven't gotten to it yet, is this kind of skill self-assessment in terms of like where we need to focus our trainings specifically for, the lead conversion that you sent out, but also I was just trying to like make a list of like all these other, areas of our business that people feel like they're confident or not confident in.
Perfect. I love seeing how people really like this aha moment of breaking down the sales process. It's going to be really big, right? Because one, it helps you all self-identify with what this all is. And as time goes on, once you build training for this once, it becomes repeatable to people that you bring in the future. And eventually the goal is to take each part of the process and build the training exactly how you do it yourself. And now you have a system that you can do, right? For everybody. So who's up next? Tommy, I'm going to call on you.
All right, I'm unmuted. Yeah, so actually this homework falls in place really well because I already have something planned for the end of the week, and then we're finishing up the week after Thanksgiving. Similar to both Margot and Stacy, but I call it team member reviews, but we don't really touch on goals. I approach the whole goal thing a little bit different. Most people think of goals and they think of numbers, but I like to focus more on the things we can do, what I can help with, and what they can do to get to those goals, right? Because we can always just throw a number out there, but how the hell are we going to do it? So I already have it scheduled in my calendar to meet with every agent, and this is something I've never done. So I've got the questions here. So basically, they're simple. It's like, what's the number one reason you like being on this team? And then what's one thing that this team does poorly that we can improve on? And then most importantly, what can I do as the team leader to help you succeed in 2023? So those are the three questions. I keep it simple. And that helps me build out kind of a playbook, a plan for them moving forward.
Allison Ziefert, you're up next.
I was just, as we were talking, I have meetings planned with each team member. And I'm going to review with them what their goals, personal and business, were for last year. What did they actually achieve? Similar to what Tommy said for next year. What are your personal and business goals? What can the team do to help you achieve those things? Because I think that drives everything. Like, the team leader has to be the person that's helping them achieve what they want to achieve. And then if you do that, everything falls into place. And also asking, I was just typing questions, also asking, what do you think the team is doing well and what we're providing for you? Where do you think we can provide more value or training? Kind of working into, Chirag, what you outlined in the email today, about maybe, focusing specifically on converting leads. I think my team actually does a really good job at converting leads, but there might be other things that they feel would be beneficial. So I was just writing a whole list of how I'm going to format these conversations.
Good.
Don't forget about me.
Coming in hot.
Oh man, I've been waiting. We surveyed the team a week ago about what's working well, where they see pain points, what we could do better, what they'd like to learn, and got some very interesting survey results, and went through those as part of our together, and then separately as part of staff planning. And there were things here or there that were like, oh, that's really insightful. And I'm kind of thinking like there's something there. And I'm acting on, but not enough. And so my intention and plan is to go back through all of those survey results and like pull out the gems in there that need to be followed up on, in the spirit of like, are we really listening to what people are telling us?
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Calissa, for him, put down review surveys, look at where the feedback is, and have proactive meetings to discuss and create proactive results for the agent. Sound about right? All right, we have like several more people to get through. That's good. Tracy, you're up next. Let's go.
Hold on, just unmuted. Very similar to what people have been saying. I think listening to Stacy with her one-on-ones. One-on-ones is not something I normally do in person. I'm on the phone with many members of the team at all different hours of the day and going through different things with them. But to have the person in front of you, it usually only happens when there's a problem. So to kind of sit down with everybody and just listen to them and, see what their thoughts are, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. And just to kind of, see where they are. And I know kind of where people are, but then sometimes when you get them in front of you, it's like a session. It all starts to come out if there's a problem that they want to talk about, or if there's something great that they want to implement. So, just to get that done within the next 2 weeks.
Perfect. Parsa.
Hi guys. Yeah, so like Tracy said, obviously, meeting with people one-on-one is very important. I like to sometimes be a little bit more specific. So I'd love to really just hear about what for each person, what the most important part of the real estate journey is, and sort of connect people back in preparation for 23, really going back to the roots of why did I come into this business? What am I trying to achieve? And kind of take it from there and try to connect on a human level, in the spirit of the holidays, but also, in preparation for what we think is going to be, in our market, it's not, but what we think is going to be a difficult year next year. So, that's something I definitely would love to do or will do.
Who's next? Jess.
I just had my team over for lunch right before the call, so it's fairly fresh. We actually, Caitlin is pretty obsessed with your website, Chirag, and she pulled up your website and went through like a checklist that you have on there that she sent out to the team that we're all going to go through individually. And then our next team meeting, which is the first week of December, we're going to put them all together and kind of compare on what each person needs to refocus on for their business. So
The client experience scorecard, is that what you're talking about?
yeah, so thank you for that. That's kind of what our momentum was during our team meeting, was just kind of business planning, but also trying to keep it pretty simple and back to the basics, because that's what I feel like is the best thing to do right now with a harder market, is just reaching out and getting in touch with your sphere and that kind of stuff.
If you guys want it, it's a client experience scorecard. We had it in our Boston workbook, but shout out to Caitlin on your team. She's literally on the sessions every single day. So if your group isn't using our playbook, like, send them there. We'll train them for you and they'll come back with nuggets and they'll thank you. So that leaves Angela and then Kevin.
So my team is in flux. I did fire finally, similar to Stacy and Tommy, somebody who was a big producer. And I think that it was the best thing I ever done. The adage, slow hire, fire fast. I should have listened to Chirag and David, and Francie Molina for that matter. So right now I'm getting ready to hire a director of operations, but Jennifer, who's on my team, and Tuck, who's on my team, both of them, similar to what Chirag sent out this morning, we talked about yesterday and today. What do they want to achieve? Neither of them have been in the market as long as I have, so they haven't seen what I think is going to be happening in the market. Some of us who've been here a longer time have seen it. And I think managing their expectations for me and understanding what their goals are very specifically, as Chirag said, very specifically. And the other thing is I ask, how can I better manage and mentor them? And I ask them very point blank, what are my weaknesses? What do I need to work on with Chirag? And we're going to follow up on that.
It's really funny with all of you that I was here. I fired them and I should have listened to Chirag. It's like, you guys all make me have a bad reputation for firing people. That's literally what people say to me. Like, if I hire you, does it mean I have to fire people? Scott, you're here too. Kevin and then Scott.
We're actually collecting a lot from our agents right now, and Margaret just added one more thing. So I'm going to wait a week or two, but we actually just like right before this meeting laid off a support assistant. And I think one of the things that I will probably collect from being the ops support lead is and aggregate is any causes for concern from the team's perspective with missing that employee. We don't think we'll get a lot of issues, but I'll work on kind of aggregating that feedback as they digest this.
Scott, and then I'm going to give a suggestion to everybody as we're doing this in the end.
You're muted, Scott. Can't hear you.
No, his sound is screwed up because he's in the car. He's going to come back.
Awesome.
Well, listen, look, as you guys are collecting all the feedback from your agents, right? Put all the critical feedback in one place. Then you could share it all with Calissa, and then we could put it all together for you in a doc. Do you guys find it valuable if you knew what all the team members are saying across all these markets? Now, this is how collaborative learning essentially works, right? It's being able to ask the right information, then being able to curate it. And the most amazing thing is once we put this together, and again, it goes back to that whole pattern recognition thing. Scott, can we hear you? All right, so
But you can send it to us, Scott.
yeah, Scott, you can email us and we'll get it. And we'll have Calista send an email out with her email so that you guys can reach out and send this to her as well. And look, the other thing is Deborah will be reaching out to you guys. Is there anyone that's not coming to Nashville? Because we have to do our room blocks and everything else. Anybody? Everyone should have the dates blocked. All right, good. So we'll see you guys, some of you here tomorrow at my house. We'll be having another holiday party in our new office, so you guys should come for that. And then we have Nashville in January. There are a lot of, now that we have all this space between my personal home and our office, there'll be lots of events and lots of times for us to all see each other over the course of the next several months. So we're not going to see any of you before Thanksgiving, in a time of giving gratitude and thanks. Look, you guys are the heartbeat of this company. And more importantly, you're all my personal friends and just great people. So I hope you guys can all take a moment, be present, disconnect with your phones, and really realize that the people that are in front of you are the most important people. And that you can take a moment, your clients and your deals can wait. And that if you can't be present in a moment and enjoy what you work 900 hours for every week, there's something off. Like life is meant to be lived. Your kids are meant to be loved, and experiences are meant to be had every single day. So take that with you. And for those of you coming here tomorrow, you're going to have quite a party. Look, you can see there's just one part of the tent. We have a bar, we have Christmas lights in there. It's quite a thing. And Deborah has hand cooked herself a 3-course meal for all of you. Literally, they're like little chocolate lava cakes. There's homemade ice cream here. You have no idea. Like, bring your appetite. Diets are out the window tomorrow, and we're all going to have a really good time. And I encourage anyone that drinks alcohol, do not drive here. Just take an Uber.
I want to just say, if anyone is in the area and wants to work out of the Greenwich office for part of the day or all the day, come on up, and then we can ride up together to Chirag's.
I'll be working out while they're eating. No, I'm going to go work out tonight, tomorrow morning, and maybe in between just to get ahead. All right, everybody. I love you all. I'm off to parent teacher conferences. I'll see everybody later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.